multiple conspiracies out there that Trevor Moore was killed by.
They're here. They're here.
We have scary stories.
They're here.
Welcome to Off-Brand Horror.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. You are watching Off-Brand Horror Unstructured. If for some reason you actually watch the show every time it comes out, you probably notice I'm posting more than once every 3 months right now. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, so there's some things that I talked about in the last episode about the movie Weapons that got quite a few comments in a clip that was posted on TikTok. And I wanted to dig a little deeper into the movie and into the connection to Trevor Moore and respond to some of those comments while it's fresh, right? So that's what I'm going to do here. A big bulk of this may be about weapons, and then we'll try to get into some other stuff maybe like we normally would. But check your chapters below if you have not seen Weapons. If you have not seen Weapons yet and you want to go in completely blind, this one will be a little spoilery. So if you're watching on TV, start fast forwarding. You'll see chapters below. Go past the point that says Weapons, and then you're out of the spoiler zone. If you're on your phone, you can start dragging. You should see chapters you can go past. And if you're on your computer, hover your mouse, you'll see chapters. Get past the weapons chapter. Now I'm giving you time to do that before we start talking about it. Everyone dies in the movie. No, that's not what happens. Let's play the TikTok clip that I'm going to be responding to comments from. Here's that clip now. This movie was dedicated through and through to Zach Kreger's friend Trevor Moore, who was also part of the Whitest Kid You Know sketch comedy group, and he passed away. Tragically, he fell off of his balcony and died. And I remember being very upset hearing about that just because he was such a big part of my life growing up, was watching Whitest Kid You Know, and specifically Trevor Moore was a huge part. Zach said that each character in this movie is a different stage he went through grieving Trevor Moore. That's a really cool concept. That's not obvious watching the movie, but to know that that was his intent going in. Because he said he sat down and started writing Weapons very soon after Trevor died. He started letting out his grievances in the form of these characters and letting these characters grieve for him. So each character was a different stage of something he went through. I'm not going to give away too much, but there was like a part where Josh Brolin's character sees his missing son in a dream and tells him, "I don't know why I have such a hard time saying I love you, and I wish I said it more." And that's so heartbreaking to think about, that Zach probably wishes he said I love you more to his friend Trevor, but it's so weird to say that, right? For some people say it all the time. My wife says I love you to her family constantly. Like every time they're on the phone, that's how they end the conversation. I can't remember the last time I've said it to a family member or they've said it to me. And then there were little things throughout it, like some homages to skits in Whitest Kid You Know. I won't say what, so you can go in and then Google it afterwards and see if you catch it when you're watching the movie, you know. And then I don't know if this is true, but it makes sense. I saw someone say online that, and this is a plot point that you know if you've seen the trailer, a bunch of kids in a classroom go missing at 2:17 a.m. They all get up and they leave their houses and they're never seen again. That was around the time that Trevor Moore died. And so most likely this is, since the movie is in tribute to Trevor, Zach is basically saying, how is it that someone can just leave the house and then never be seen again? Anyway, 5-star movie to me. Like I said, without even knowing all that stuff about Trevor, I just thought it was a really good movie.
Watch out now, take ugly words thought.
All right, first I want to respond to this comment from Bobby Noodlehead. All right, Babby Noodlehead. Bobby. He says, "Dang, never saw it this way, but I can see that making sense. Especially you saying that each character's story is Kreger dealing with the loss of his friend in one way or another. Even in this comment section, you've got people who don't believe Moore fell off of his balcony. It has to be some sort of conspiracy, which is basically how they all blame the Justine character for the kids going missing. It's all a conspiracy to them rather than believing her when she says she had nothing to do with it. And that's a really good point. So in the movie, there's the teacher who the kids all disappeared from her classroom, right? Obviously, everyone is blaming her. What did you do in your class? What did you say? Did you abduct these kids? Why is every other class in the school okay? So it's a conspiracy, and they're all blaming Justine for the kids' disappearance. And they're obviously missing the fact that there is a witch in the town that has abducted the kids, and they're not doing any investigating to see which way the kids ran and that it all leads up to the one kid that didn't disappear. They're focused on the conspiracy, and they're not seeing that it's leads back to this kid's house, and it's because a witch has infiltrated his family. And so my response to Babby on TikTok was a great point. I've also seen the theory that Gladys, the witch, is a symbol for alcoholism in many different ways, because alcoholism has followed Zach his entire life, all the way back to being a kid with alcoholic parents. The fact that Trevor was drunk when he fell from his balcony ties into the fact that while everyone had a conspiracy for his death, or the disappearance of the kids, if we're drawing parallels here, it was really the fault of alcoholism, or the mind-controlling witch would be the parallelism. Because yeah, I've seen people draw that parallel online, saying that the witch in and of herself could be a symbol for alcoholism, especially because Zach Kreger has said in an interview, which we'll read from a little bit later on, that as a child he did have an alcoholic dad. And so being that the witch, like they're sitting at the table and the witch is telling the little boy, you want to see what kind of control I have over them, and then she makes the parents start stabbing themselves in the face with the fork. And it's like that could be a symbol that alcoholism is controlling of a person. And Zach had mentioned that, only the child of an addict or an alcoholic will know the caretaker role that you have to take on at such a young age. And that's just like the kid in the movie who has to feed his parents the soup, and then eventually has to feed all of the missing kids soup down in the basement. He has to be a caretaker while alcoholism, or the witch, does its thing. The fact that Trevor Moore had alcohol in his system and fell off of a balcony and tragically died in that manner, I'm sure kind of struck home for Zach Kreger, because he's had alcoholism around him his whole life from his childhood. He has struggled with it himself, and then his friend dies as a result of it because he's dizzy and he falls off the balcony. So of course that's the parallel that he would draw, while everyone chases this conspiracy, which is what we're going to get into now, that Trevor Moore was killed, right? Because there's conspiracies, multiple conspiracies out there, that Trevor Moore was killed by the Illuminati, the CIA, somebody killed Trevor Moore, right? And the reason that people say this is because all the things that Trevor loved to call out within his comedy, right? It's something he's always done, is called out these different things, about our world. There's the Trevor Moore skit that he did from High in Church about the Illuminati.
This is a cool office. I like the little fire things over there and everything.
Hi, we're the Illuminati.
Hi. Hello. Hi.
So we heard about your big special. We are very excited.
Yeah, thanks. Me too.
Yeah, but before you can do a special on a major cable network, we're gonna need you to sign some things.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll also need to film you in a lewd act with a minor to use as blackmail if you ever think of telling anyone about anything that happened here today.
Now, could I self-tape that, or is that something that you'd want me to shoot here?
We'd like you to do that here.
There's the song he did about the exploitation of children.
Help me, my parents sold me to a big producer in the record industry. He makes me do things that I don't want to do. Please call child services or maybe SVU.
There's even the Whitest Kid You Know sketch about something that is very illegal to say.
I want to kill the President of the United States of America. I'm not actually saying it. I'm just letting you know that it's illegal to say that. It's kind of like a public service. I'm letting you know so that you don't accidentally go out and say something like that. But what's interesting is that it's very illegal to say, I really, really think someone out there should kill the President of the United States of America.
One of my favorites is him calling out the Pope for the Catholic Church and how they just move the priest around whenever there's any type of molestation situation.
Look at the ass on him. He's got a face that's an 8 but an age of 10. If a priest gets fresh and a complaint comes in, switch him to another city, then game on again.
And this.
See how there's no windows on the side? And see underneath where there's like a pod thing? What's that, right? Take a look at this wreckage. See how there's no plane parts on the ground there? What does that look like?
A missile.
And this.
It's weird. It's like the only reason capitalism works is because it plays on man's biggest flaw.
I'm gonna turn this bus around! I'll turn it right around!
And this.
Portfolios to uphold for government bonds. You know those things countries use to finance all of their bombs. Cause God is love, but he still invests heavily in hate. You've seen the maintenance fees to maintain pearly gates.
And this.
We wouldn't happen to be invading Iran today, would we?
You got me. You got
I fell for it. You almost got away with that one.
me. No, I went too far. I almost had it. I should have stopped.
And this.
Hey girl, what's wrong?
My grandmother just died.
Oh, I'm real sorry to hear about that. You know, it'd be a shame if someone were to stick her in a place where she just burned and burned forever. You don't want that, do you?
No.
You know, I think I'm gonna have to get some of my boys to pray real hard to make sure that doesn't happen. Don't you?
Yes, please. Oh, thank you.
Bitch, you got my fucking money.
And this.
You see, President Bush was in a secret society at Yale called the Skull and Bones. His dad was too, and they all worship Satan.
President Bush worships Satan?
In my personal opinion, absolutely.
There's all these different things that Trevor has called out throughout his career, and then since his death was initially so suspect in the eyes of fans because they weren't releasing a lot of information about how it happened. Of course, now they have released the information, but people still don't believe it. There's still people that believe in these conspiracy theories, which Trevor Moore may actually have appreciated because the fact that he too loved a conspiracy theory.
What conspiracies do you believe? Get asked a lot about conspiracy stuff. Do you believe in any conspiracy theories? I know that you do, but
all of them.
In fact, it's like a circle. Trevor Moore loved conspiracy theories, though he would say outright that he doesn't believe it's actually true. He just thinks it's a good conspiracy theory. And people use those conspiracy theories that he would talk about to say that that's why he was killed, was because he was going to out someone. There's someone in my comments that said that he was getting ready to out a bunch of pedophiles. Look, all I'll say about the conspiracy theories is this. It doesn't make sense to kill Trevor based on things he's already said and things he's said for his entire career since he was a young man and the whitest kid you know. This had been years and years that he had said all the things that we've been watching and referencing. It doesn't make sense to say, okay, well, now that he's been doing this for so long, let's go throw him off his balcony now. If anything, that just brings more attention to the things he said. Oh, now people who've never heard of him are interested. Now we're talking about it here. That part just doesn't make any sense. The only thing that would make sense is if he somehow had some information about someone that we didn't already know about that he was going to release and that person had him killed. I'm not saying I believe that. That's just the only theory, the only conspiracy theory that would make sense. Not that it would matter. We there are known pedophiles everywhere. And I'm not going to call him a map. Someone commented on TikTok and they were like, Trevor Moore was going to out some maps. And I was like, maps? And I had to Google maps. And minor attracted persons? Pedophiles. Maps. That's for Dora the Explorer. On the map, on the map, on the map. You just ruined that whole song. On the map, on the map, on the map. Find the map. You know what I'm saying? Just release Epstein's list. That's all I'm saying, dude. That's all I'm saying. And I'm sure you guys will rip me a new one because conspiracy theorists are ruthless, man. They're ruthless. People have posted videos of him talking to Zach about a conspiracy theory that Jeffrey Epstein had created a novel coronavirus and had said that if anyone ever does anything to me, this is on a switch that will release this coronavirus. And then if you look at the timing of him dying in jail and then COVID coming out, that those two things correlate. And Trevor Moore talked about this to Zach, and he was like, I don't believe it, but I like the conspiracy theory, so I'm going to spread it. Which is...
Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein.
Sure.
We all know Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
Rest in peace. He was also obsessed with bioengineering.
Oh, yeah. Like nanotechnology and shit, right?
Well, biotechnology, and so he had all of these scientists that he would donate money to their charities, and he would have them work on things and stuff. And people were saying that he was trying to create he wanted to basically be able to alter genes and make different kinds of life and stuff like that. But what I heard, and this is completely unsubstantiated, but I heard it and I thought it was fascinating, was that he also had these same guys, because they were disease specialists and everything like that. He had them design a novel coronavirus that was his kill switch. Basically, that was his trump card, which is I don't go to jail or I release this shit. And it's one of these things where if I don't keep entering in a thing every 30 days, I die. Then when they killed him in October or November, his kill switch went off. And that's when the disease got introduced into the world and slowly started to spread in the last quarter of last year until it became what we do today. I don't believe it.
I don't. I'm with you. I don't believe that for a second, but that's a goddamn great conspiracy theory.
I love it, and I'm going to spread it as much as I can.
And now people conveniently leave out the part where he says, I don't actually believe this. And they're like, see, he was on to something, and that's why they took him out. And then people point to the Joe Rogan interview where he was on Joe Rogan, and they mentioned falling off a balcony.
On the roof with a baseball bat. You wait for that fucker.
Imagine if you died because you were trying to hit a fucking drone and you slipped and fell off your roof and broke your neck. That would be a sad funeral. This stupid fuck. He died trying to hit a home run off a drone.
And they're saying, see, and I don't know what that theory is. Joe Rogan killed him. But you can go through and see all kinds of theories. You see, so people will put all of this together and they say, there's no way Trevor Moore simply got drunk and fell off of his balcony, right? Which honestly may be the truth, because the whitest kids you know, his closest friends, have even said that's not how he died. This is how the whitest kids you know say he actually died.
People want to know more details of how Trevor died. I guess Sam will get into it, right?
Yeah.
You want to go first?
I mean, it's tough. We've been talking about this. It's kind of like, we all know the name of the stream and everything like that, but Trevor had been...
I mean, it was a mission of his life.
Yeah.
And he
was attempting to suck his own dick. Yeah. And he'd been... You told me this. I didn't know about this, but...
He was going to go to Mexico to have a rib removed, but I guess he couldn't wait. And the good news is the coroner said that the cause of death was actually that he asphyxiated on his own jizz. So... Right. He pulled it off. He did it. He got there. Guys.
And there was a moment where they said he died with a smile on his face.
So, and technically it was Saturday morning, so it was a self-suck Saturday. So think about it.
Someone in chat said he came and went.
Oh, who said that?
All the t-shirt press, I gotta do.
Okay, so obviously I do not know Zach Kreger personally. I did not know Trevor Moore. I do not know any of the guys from The Whitest Kids You Know, although I did talk to Timmy on the phone once. I'll talk about that later on. It's not up to me to say anything about how he died. The only reason I'm talking about it now is because There's too many comments to ignore of people saying he fell, he fell, he fell. I don't feel comfortable saying anything but the facts that I know, or at least how they're presented to me online. I would hate to lose a close friend or family member and have to be dealing with that and then see a bunch of people online that don't even know you, didn't know the person, all claiming that he was murdered. So I don't feel comfortable talking about that. It's not up to me to say anything about that. But I did want to just talk about the theory for the movie Weapons about Gladys the Witch being a representation for alcohol. I like talking about theories for movies, regardless of if they end up being true or not, which Zach Kreger is leaving a lot of stuff up to the audience on how they want to interpret it. People have even said the triangle in Weapons, in the title, you can see a triangle in Weapons is literally the symbol for Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, right here. It's literally the symbol for AA. So it's from the very beginning, from the title sequence, from seeing the word weapons, you can see that the movie was going to very heavily reference alcoholism. Another comment I wanted to respond to was from James Merrick on TikTok, and he was pointing out that Zach stated that 217 is a reference to the movie The Shining. And in fact, he almost made it 237 after the movie, because the book says 217 and then the movie says 237, which is true to an extent, because I think the way Zach says it matters, because there's all kinds of theories about 217, right? Mine was that it was connected to Trevor Moore's death because he died around 217 or around 230, as you'll see on Wikipedia. So let's see the exact clip that's being referenced here.
It'd just be me projecting onto the movie, but so much of this film feels Stephen King coded to me.
Fair.
Really just from the alcoholic school teacher, the 217. Yeah. How much 217 was that in your head to a certain degree?
Subconsciously.
Yeah.
217 has to have come from that. It has to have. And I'm a Kubrick guy when it comes to The Shining. You know, I definitely worship that movie, and I thought of changing it to 237. But then I was like, you know what? My first impulse has got to be the one I stick with, so I kept 217.
It's important to notice how the question was asked and then how it was answered. It was directly asked, was this a thing from The Shining? Was this a reference to The Shining? And Zach says, it has to be, right? That's insinuating that he takes so much influence from The Shining that perhaps it was a subconscious thing. And then later on, when they're actually going to film the movie, he almost even changed it to 237 because he prefers the movie, draws influence from the movie. But that doesn't mean he went in and said, I'm going to make it 217 because of The Shining. He said that it's probably a subconscious thing. But what he does say is this.
What is the significance of 2:17 a.m.?
It's a detail that I thought would just lodge in the characters' brains. Why 217?
Yeah.
And so I just thought it was sticky. You know, the number itself is debatably significant, but just the fact that there is a number, I thought was that's the point.
Yeah. Is it true when you started writing, you kind of started with this idea of the kids leaving at 2:17, but didn't actually know where you were going to go?
I did not know.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that and how that process was
I'm
for
just
you?
typing. Honestly, this girl says this is a true story. That's the first line. Okay, what is the story? I don't know. These kids went out of the house. Okay, really? Where'd they go? I don't know. And I knew as I was writing it, okay, so these kids all left the house. They didn't show up in class. All right, so now I've got a teacher. I can have an angry parent. So that's kind of all I got as I'm getting into it. And then I was like, I know I want a cop somehow. I just knew I needed a cop.
Yeah.
But I didn't know where they went. And so it wasn't until a few days in and I'm maybe approaching the halfway point where I'm like, I gotta figure this out or I'm gonna have a real problem. You know, because I have a lot of scripts that kind of do this and I don't land the plane. So that moment where I kind of had the aha, you know, that was a good day.
So he says he just sits down and he's just typing. All of this is coming to him, right? And he has said in other interviews that he did this in response to the death of a friend, as I mentioned in the clip that people are commenting on right now. Josh Brolin has even brought it up a couple of times. The thing is, Zach has never actually said, to my knowledge, that I've seen in the interviews that I've read and watched, he's never said Trevor Moore's name. He said a close friend. Josh Brolin has also said, yeah, when Zach came to me about this and we were talking, he said this was actually about a close friend who had passed away.
I think the biggest thing was he told me the story. I read it. It's a really well-designed script. You don't see that very often. And, you know, people like Nolan, when he first did his movies, or Iñárritu, they had a non-linear design, like my book, and it's attractive to me. And then I met him, and he told me that every character was based on his reaction to a friend of his passing away. So there was an emotional, and then he's talking about a horror movie, which is a very cosmetic thing, and I loved the fact that he was coming from it from a very emotional place. So, smart. He's a smart guy, and he made a really good movie. I don't know how the f*** he did it, but he did.
Now, you put together yourself that it's Trevor Moore, because we all know Zach from Whitest Kid You Know, and we know that Trevor Moore died around the time that he sat down and started writing Weapons. What that tells me is it's not something he's exactly comfortable talking about, because the movie isn't inherently about grief. It isn't about that. It's almost a hidden message that's within it. It's something he did for his own grieving purpose. This wasn't something he sat down and wrote down with the pure reason to be, I'm going to write about Trevor's death. I'm going to write about this. No, he sat down and he wrote a horror movie, and there are there are reflections of himself in this script that he wrote, if that makes sense. He wrote stuff like he said he's just typing. He sat down and he's just typing. So the fact that Trevor Moore died around 2:30 a.m., it could have been 2:17 or it could have been 2:37. And he's mentioned that there are multiple connections to different things in this movie. Any one thing can have multiple meanings to it. And he has said he leaves that up to the audience, to whatever you want to make of it, because that's what art is. It's whatever you make of it. But if we're talking about what Zach himself made of it, the theory is that since he has confirmed that it was about the death of a close friend, that a lot of these things in the movie were probably about Trevor. We cannot say for sure because he is not comfortable talking about it. And I think that should be respected, that people shouldn't feel the need to ask him about that in any interviews or anything like that, because the movie is a movie that stands alone. It's a great horror comedy movie. It's about a witch and some kids that disappeared, and that's what he wrote, and that's all you need to know going into the movie. In fact, I'm going to read some of what he said in the Rolling Stone, because this is in text format. So I'll read some of his quotes. One of the things he says is, Weapons was like me vomiting, which is, I think, a reference to he sat down and he typed. He was vomiting. He was grieving, and he sat down and he wrote. He says, I was working on post-production on Barbarian when my best friend died very suddenly in a really awful accident. Again, doesn't say Trevor Moore, says my best friend, up to you to put that together. In an effort to deal with his grief, Kreger began a blitz of writing over about 2 weeks or so. I just started sentence 1. This is a true story. Half of my hometown, all of these kids bailed. You know, I'm writing this cold open and I don't know where the kids went. I'm just like, okay, let's go. Let's see if I can solve this. What happened? Who were they? What was left behind? What does it feel like? What it felt like, he eventually realized, was channeling a palpable sense of loss that allowed him to process what he was going through in the most outrageous ways possible. He says, look, like the rest of the world, I don't want to watch another horror movie about grief. That whole horror as a metaphor for grief is so fucking played out. I shouldn't even be talking about this, but I can't help myself. See, he doesn't want to talk about it. Also, not only is it maybe a sore subject or something he just doesn't want to talk about, but also he's tired of horror movies being about grief. So he didn't want to make this inherently about grief. He says, I don't care if anybody gets any of that when they watch it. I want them to have fun. If the story rips, none of that matters. But I wanted to do something honest, he continues, and I found that as I kept writing and the more I identified with all of the people I was writing about, the more this became something like an honest diary of my inner shit. It's funny, I was talking to Ari Aster about this and was like, I don't know about this personal stuff. And he said, the personal stuff is what makes this work. Don't be ashamed of it. Hearing him say that, it's now a part of the DNA of Weapons. The town is dealing with the loss, and so was I. It's the biggest direct hit I've ever taken. So you see, we know that it's about Trevor Moore. We know that it's about grief, but not in a way that you even need to know going in. Just like he doesn't outright say that the 7 hot dogs are a reference to a Whitest Kid You Know skit. In fact, I think someone even asked him before the movie came out, will there be any Whitest Kid You Know references in this movie? He said no. And then there obviously were. It's something he doesn't want to talk about. So we're not going to get him to sit down and be like, yes, I was a very sad boy because my best friend died. He doesn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. He expressed himself through the art in a way that he needed to do for himself, period. You know, a lot of people thought that it was about gun violence. Like the whole movie was this political statement, which he said it's not. But if that's what you take from it, more power to you. There's the floating gun above the house with 217 on it. He says that it was just a cool image, while other people was like, oh, it's because there were 217 votes in the house. Like, there's all these theories that you can look up about 217 and about multiple aspects of the movie, and I don't think we're ever going to get a for sure sit down, this is what I meant thing, because that's not what the art is there for. You can take your own interpretation, and that's okay. He can have his own. I could be completely wrong about some of my assumptions, and that's just what I'm taking from it, which is good for me, because it's good to mourn and to grieve when people pass away. You have to do that kind of thing. It's good to be a sad boy or a sad girl sometimes. It's good to have that emotion, and seeing Zach grieve through this horror movie when maybe someone close to me dies, and I grieve by sitting down and watching a horror movie, and people are like, that's weird. But to me, it's more of a distraction. Now I can watch this one and be distracted, and also maybe a little sad. Maybe it gets the tears flowing. Maybe it's that cry that I needed, but I couldn't get it out of myself, because sometimes tears are shoved up in your eyeballs and they just don't want to fall. And then when they do fall, it's a release. Finally, the tears have released themselves from my face. Pause this video right now and take a moment to cry. Okay, let's cry. Let's cry right now. Collectively, together. All right, I've talked way too long. I don't know how I'm going to get all of this in a TikTok clip, because I know you bastards aren't clicking and watching the full video. I've seen a couple people say that they thought Trevor died in a car crash as well, and I don't know where that came from. I always heard it was from a balcony. People may have thought that because initially they said Trevor Moore dies from accident. It didn't say car accident, it said accident. Later it was revealed it was falling from his balcony. Who knows? Maybe Trevor would love all the conspiracy theories. I bet he would. What little I know about him. I hate to say stuff like that about people I don't know. It's like, oh, he would love this. It's like, based off what? The YouTube videos you watched with him in it? You don't know what people are like. You don't know what they love. And he's not here to love it. So I worry about his family and friends and what they may think about it. All right, so yeah, let me know what's some stuff that I missed when it comes to weapons that you want to hear me yap about. Feel free to post more comments about different connections and different things that you think about the movie or about Trevor Moore or whatever, you know. I've talked about this for a long time. This was supposed to just be one part of this video, and now it's like, should I post this as a whole separate thing? I don't know. So yeah, the weapons chapter is over. There you go. Looky there. That was a long chapter. Look at how much you missed, all because you haven't watched Weapons yet. Hey, go watch Weapons. Hey, leave your house and go watch Weapons, and then you can watch all of that while it's still a hot topic. All right, to continue talking about comments left on the last video. This is not weapons related. Calm down if you haven't seen Weapons yet. This is in reference to naming the 10 best horror movies of 2025 so far. Someone commented and said, am I the only one who didn't really like Companion? It was super, super predictable for me. Wasn't horrible. I just don't understand why people put it on lists. Nothing memorable or or special about it. Well, hey, that's just like your opinion, man. You know what I mean? And you're entitled to that. And that's fine that you didn't like it. I liked it and other people liked it. That's pretty simple, huh? It was too predictable to you. Congratulations. Where'd you go to college? All right, yeah, I've got to think of other stuff to talk about real quick for the people that clicked this video to hear about things other than weapons, which isn't many of you, because let's be honest, not many of you even clicked this shit, huh? Last YouTube video has like 15 views as of right now. All right, it's the TikTok clips that get the views. Got 10,000 on the Trevor Moore one, couple hundred on the other little clips. All right, I'm a TikToker now. But it doesn't matter, right? Because we're all gonna have to give our IDs away just to watch this shit anyway. Pretty soon, you know. Work has been busy. Jesus Christ, you know I don't have anything else to talk about. All right, look, I'm just going to say I apologize to anyone who clicked this video and was like, oh, cool, I'll just skip past the weapons talk. Sorry, that's just what happens. Let's look up some horror news and put an end to this, okay? Because we still end every episode with horror news. All right, this is posted by Yahoo. Yahoo! It says Home Alone meets horror in this action-packed Netflix thriller. When I first heard about The Babysitter, I was a little nervous. After all, it was a Netflix exclusive horror film. Strike one. And directed by MCG, the guy who brought us Terminator Salvation. Strike two. After years of seeing it in my Netflix queue, I decided to give it a shot one night, and the film was an absolute horror revelation that did for the modern slasher what Scream did back in 1996. Oh, okay, easy. And it did so by asking the most provocative possible question. What if Home Alone had been a horror film? I've always asked that question. I said that they should get Macaulay Culkin and do a horror version of Home Alone, you know, which they kind of did. Remember that it was like a YouTube video, and Macaulay Culkin got like, am I saying his name right? And he got like kidnapped or something. I'd have to rewatch the video, and then like he used his, I don't remember. I'll post like a little clip of it, and then I'll put the link in the description so you can watch the full thing. But anyway, I've been asking that question
before. I'll sort of enjoy it. Can't seem to find my scalpel, but I'll pick a new one up when I go out today. Other than that, I'm in great shape.
And then also kind of, what's that Santa Claus movie that came out recently? Violent Night. Violent Night has like a scene from it where they're going after the little girl, and she does like some hardcore Home Alone stuff. So I feel like it's been done a little bit here and there, but...
Jesus shit! I'm gonna have to kill this little piece of shit!
Let's continue. The premise of 2017's The Babysitter is nice and simple. A high school freshman has developed... Wait, this is from 2017? You're just now talking about it? A high school freshman has developed quite the rapport with this hot babysitter thanks to his parents, often staying at a hotel for some mommy-daddy private time. He never had any reason to worry about his sitter, but he makes the mistake of checking out what she and her friends get up to after he goes to sleep. It turns out they are all full-on cultists. And when he discovers their satanic shenanigans, it takes all of his wits to avoid becoming their next sacrifice. While he seems completely doomed at first glance, nobody knows his own house like our young protagonist. This allows him to go full Kevin McAllister on his would-be killers, and he weaponizes everything from bug spray to leftover fireworks. This effectively subverts the typical slasher formula, and it's great watching the increasingly demented ways our final boy can take care of this murderous mob. I will have to watch this. There's more to this article, but you know, it's long. Just skip to the end. The film was successful enough to warrant a sequel. How come I've never heard of it? And how come we're just now talking about it in a brand new article? That's weird. It was successful enough to warrant a sequel, which deepens some of these characters' relationships and furthers the lore behind the creepy cult's motivations. That sequel is worth checking out for many reasons, including a great performance from Jenna Ortega, but there's nothing quite like the original. And if you're ready to experience one of the sickest and most perfectly cast slashers of the modern age, be sure to check out The Babysitter on Netflix. So this is just a giant ad for this movie that I guess just got added to Netflix, and Netflix probably paid Yahoo to talk about it. There was another Home Alone-esque movie too. It had the dude from, I can't think of his name for some reason right now, from King of Queens. All right, we're gonna have to go down this rabbit hole real quick, and then we'll call it a video. King of Queens, search Kevin James. Okay, now we'll do Kevin James horror movie Becky. It was technically an action/thriller. Yeah, that was basically Home Alone type thing too, but that was 2020. And then that Santa Claus movie I was talking about, Violent Night, was 2022. So this one technically predates both of those. Yeah, I'll have to look it up and then we could talk about it in the next video. So this has been going on for way too long. Talked a lot about weapons and the little messages in there. And that's it. Bye. Bonus content for staying until the end of the video. I was just editing and I realized I didn't tell the story about when I talked to Timmy from Whitest Kids You Know on the phone, which I promised to do earlier in the episode. So yeah, I was young. I was a kid. I don't know how old I was. And Trevor Moore had supposedly posted Timmy's number online in like an online forum. I don't even know where this would be in those days. It was probably like the Whitest Kids You Know website. Back in the day, there was actually a website for everything you could think of. You know, Nickelodeon.com. In these days, everything's just on like social. What's their Instagram page? What's their TikTok page? But yeah, I think it was like they had their own website. And Trevor Moore had posted Timmy's phone number. So we were calling it. Me and my friends would call it constantly, like multiple times every single day. And most of the time it would ring, and go to a voicemail. I think eventually Timmy, this could have been a marketing thing that they set up from the beginning, right? But when we called the first few times, it was like a standard voicemail. And then eventually the voicemail ended up changing to like a skit from Whitest Kids You Know. It was Timmy's voice saying, "Bestiality is way against park regulations." So we're like, oh, okay, he knows, you know, like a bunch of fans are probably calling him now. So he changed his voicemail. So they get like that little surge of energy, like, oh my God, you know, it's actually him. But me and my friend Trevor, I had a friend named Trevor, we called way past the prime of that. Like so much time went by where it probably fell off. And you would think that he changed his number, right? Or something like that. And we would still call. We'd get together. We'd be waiting in line for a movie and let's call Timmy's number. And there was this one day after we watched a movie, we were in the movie theater parking lot waiting for our ride. And we're out there hanging out and we're like, oh, let's call Timmy. Open up the old flip phone. And we call Timmy's number. It rings and he answers. He says something to the effect of, "Oh my God, how many fucking times are you gonna call me?" And me and Trevor look at each other and I'm like, wait, is this actually you? And he goes, "Yes, it's me. You're calling my number. For Christ's sake. Blah, blah." You know, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he's freaking out. He's like, "Yes, it's me. Blah, 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 blah." And Trevor's like, "Holy shit, Timmy, what's up?" And he's like, "For fuck's sake, stop calling me. Leave me alone." And he hangs up. And then we're like, and we call back again immediately. And it doesn't even ring. It goes straight to voicemail. "Bestiality is way against park regulation." Yeah, that was the time that we talked to Timmy from Whitest Kids You Know on the phone. Now he could have not been him. I don't know. We don't know. But it's a fond memory to look back on. That's the story. That's it. Nothing special to it. Just some kids that had a good time growing up on the Whitest Kids You Know. Let's look up that. I wonder if I can find that phone number. I wonder if it's still out there. All right. I can't find it anywhere. I can't even find. That's so sad. That's so sad. You would think it still exists somewhere. I can't find anything about it online. I can't even find anyone talking about it. Like, hey, remember when Timmy's number was posted? Did I dream this entire thing? I'm going to have to reach out to my friend Trevor and see if he remembers. If you remember this, or if you have any information about it, if you're old enough and watched Whitest Kids You Know like I did growing up and you remember that, and you called the number, or if you can find any info about it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to read other people's experience with that. But that's it. So I will catch you guys on the next video. Thank you to all 10 people who watched this, and have a grantastic day. My brain's not broken. Grantastic.